Hola, amigos. This is your bass player, Billy Sheehan. You're listening to me right here on Two Guys Talking About Rush. What a great program. I rest my case, Your Honor.
Guys are talking, rush two 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 guys.
And now, get ready for the Two Guys Talking Rush podcast with your hosts, John Kane and Dan Buxton.
Hey folks, this is John Kane and welcome to episode 14 of the Two Guys Talking Rush podcast. Another milestone for a couple of middle-aged slackers who had nothing better to do during a pandemic but start a nerd fest in their parents' basement about their favorite band, Rush. This show is like Wayne's World on Zoom, so get used to it. Sadly, this week, my trusty co-host and the delightful Dan Buxton could not be with us on this episode. Dan had a scheduling conflict, and no, he didn't demand more money, nor was there a rider conflict. Dan is still with the show. At least that's what his agent told me. Remember, no one's getting paid here, folks. We're getting paid in Rush. And yes, Dan will be back next week. Remember, we're a show hosted by fans, for fans, and our listeners know we are inclusive. We try to mix it up with guests and content each week. We want fans to join us on this magnificent journey. So who better to have as my guest host, my guest and co-host this week than rock radio DJ extraordinaire, Boston rock personality legend, a giant of a Rush fan, and someone I can call a friend, the magnificent Mike Hsu. Mike, wow. Welcome to Two Guys.
What an intro. That's a lot of pressure Rush. Now. Yeah, I'm psyched to be on Two Guys Talking Rush. I'm one of the guys talking Rush now. This is awesome. That's quite an intro, man. I hope I can be as delightful as Dan.
You're the magnificent Mike Hsu.
I know, that's pretty huge.
It is.
I gotta live up to that pressure now.
You're like the Joan Rivers, what Joan Rivers was to all these co-hosts to these folks who kind of like came in the clutch. You're the clutch co-host. Yeah.
The Tony Randall. When Carson was sick at the last minute, they bring in Tony Randall.
I love it. Well, how are you, man? How you been?
I'm doing good, man. Like everybody else, I'm trying to stay busy. I'm working at 100 FM The Pike here in beautiful Worcester. Now I'm on at night 6 to 8, Monday through Friday. I'm on Saturdays 4 to 7. I'm involved in 2 podcasts. One is called Breaking the Ice with the guy who I used to do afternoons with at WAAF in Boston, Josh Dolan, and another guy who was on the air at WAAF, Isaiah. And that's a lot of fun. We're just kind of continuing that really bad attitude that was, prevalent during WAAF's time when it was alive. So we're just kind of continuing that kind of stuff. And then I'm also involved in another podcast also that involves a Canadian artist called Long May You Young. It's a Neil Young podcast because I'm also a huge Neil Young fan. And I do that with Luke and Russ Condon, who are brothers, and they're in this band called Town Meeting, who are from the Air area. And they're fantastic, but they're also huge Neil heads. And we are covering Neil's catalog by release. And the next episode we have coming up is a tough one. It's for Trans, which was a very controversial album.
Oh, the one with all the sounds on it and all that?
Oh, yeah. He's experimenting.
That was for his son. That was for his son, right?
Right. You know what? When you learn that, you feel bad about all the things that you said about
shut up, everybody, about Trans assholes.
It makes a little more sense, but that's a fun podcast, too. Yeah. And, just trying to stay busy all around. But I really appreciate you having me on the show, man. When I started seeing it come up on social media, I'm like, oh, cool, Rush podcasts, And
listen, You know, where I met, I think, you know, as I mentioned before, Dan and I met, we've written a couple of books since I met you last. I think we met while I interviewed you at WAAF for my documentary, which is still, it's shot and it's still being edited. It's going to take me a while because I have a daughter now, as you know, that could slow things down.
Yes, it can.
But that documentary about the Stairway to Heaven, the place you and I used to go to where we buy our Rush regalia, you know, our Rush T-shirts and all that stuff.
The shirts, everything, the patches.
Yes,
that was a great place, man.
A big shout out to the Stairway to Heaven and the many other shops, poster shops around the United States that would kind of give us those items that we needed to go to our concerts with and all that. And the Stairway to Heaven in Boston was very much that for us. So, but again, thank you for being on the show. And, I feel like so many years I listened to you on WAF. I love listening to WAF. It's sad to learn of a radio station kind of going away, and I first experienced that with WBCN, and I don't even consider you guys rivals. BCN had been around for a while. They had many different formats, many different DJ personalities. AAF was very much centered on the hard rock thing, and I appreciated that focus. But what's it like, witnessing the death of a radio station, man? I mean, what? Behind the scenes.
What's it like pulling the plug?
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this is the second radio station I've been involved in that I've had I was the last person on the air.
No shit.
Or one of the last people on the air.
Wow.
And the first was an alternative station in Richmond, Virginia, which in the mid 90s, stations were being bought and sold, and it got bought out by a company and they turned it into an oldies station. So we kind of did the same thing. And but with AAF, it was tough because, not only was I was losing a job that I loved, but it was a 50-year legacy. I mean, the station had been a rock station for 50 years. For a radio station to maintain the same kind of format for that long is pretty amazing. And it was I've only worked at a handful of radio stations, and it was a very different attitude and atmosphere there. It was we always described it as kind of gang-like.
Yeah.
When I first came on in there in 1999, I noticed it right away. It was just like, this is a dangerous group of people. This is a group of people who could seriously cause trouble, damage, personal harm. I was just like, from everybody, from the personalities, and then the street team, the promotions people.
Right.
It seemed like they were like there's like these full-grown men. They were the muscle of the radio station, because at that time we were at war with WBCN.
I know.
And then you had to have this kind of toughness, to take them on literally out in the streets.
But you grew up in Natick, and I grew up in Somerville. Didn't you grow up listening to WBCN as a?
Oh, absolutely. I listened to them and COZ and what was it, CGY in Lawrence.
Yeah.
And HJY in Providence, and we were blessed with a myriad of rock stations back in
Boston
the day.
Boston rocks, man. Yeah.
Yeah. All of New England was rocking pretty hard, but I actually did my very first internship at WBCN.
Oh, wow.
I interned with Charles Laquadera in the Big Mattress in the morning, which was it was radio boot camp, because that was like one of the number one or top morning shows at the time in the early or mid 80s.
Yeah.
When I graduated high school. And that was an experience. I got to work with him and Billy West and Tank. Ooh. And I got to meet people like Mark Parento, who was someone that I really admired, and Catherine Lauren and Tammy Heidi and, everybody, Ken Shelton. I got to see these people work. I got to kind of work with them a little bit as an intern. And that was just a really great experience. But
that's awesome.
But AAF going off the air really hurt, because it was something that I really, and Carrie, Mistress Carrie.
Yeah, I was going to say, I watch her podcast now. She's so awesome.
She is great. And she's doing really well. I had no doubt, but she really is WAAF.
Yeah.
And she bled the station, and we all did. We all loved that place so much. And it was bad enough losing a job, but knowing that the whole radio station was going away.
Yeah.
That made it even tougher. because we had put so much, of our blood and sweat and tears into it. And just knowing that was going away too, although I don't know what it would be like to not work there and have to listen to it, after 20 years, it would have been tough, but
now it's a Christian music station, right?
I know. Somehow it seems appropriate, paying for our sins of the past, at least 20 years that I know of, while we were there. But yeah, it was a Christian, contemporary Christian music network.
Yeah.
And they're based in Los Angeles, and they were buying up radio stations across the country, and it was a business thing.
Yeah.
They offered the right number to the company that owned us, and they accepted.
Yeah.
And so, it's just radio is a business, and
more so now than ever. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. But, AAF had a really good run, did some amazing things over the years. You can go back to, Greg Hill being on that station for 30 years and doing the morning show. Opie and Anthony,
that's right.
And then way back in the day, you got Bob and Zip. And,
that's right.
Chuck Nolan was on AAF at one point. There were so many great DJs on there. And that's where I first heard Rush. It was actually, the first time I heard Geddy Lee's voice wasn't a Rush song. That's the first I heard of Rush. He sang on a song with a Canadian band called Max Webster. Yeah. They had a song called Battle Scar. And I just remember going, this song is awesome. And this chick has an amazing voice. I was like, I don't know, 12 at the time or something. I don't know. Had no idea that was a guy.
She sounds different.
I know. She sounds like this Canadian chick sounds amazing. But that was like my first kind of taste of Rush. And then later on, obviously I heard more music the more I listened to radio, and I had friends who had records and stuff, but so it was heartbreaking. It was very heartbreaking.
I'm sorry, because I love radio. I've loved radio ever since I was a little kid, and I've always listened to radio. I still listen to radio. I buy, I'm kind of like a yard sailing, antique kind of vintage buying sort of dude, and I always buy radios. I always feel guilty if there's a vintage radio sitting there that works. I buy it. I have a collection of them. I just can't help myself. Yeah, totally, man. I love radio, and it's sad that the format is kind of not dwindling, but being monopolized in the way that it has been. But so moving on, and we're gonna dip back into your history a little bit later on. But one thing that is certifiable, we are a couple of massholes.
Oh yeah,
we are.
Grew up in Natick, and now I live in Worcester. I've lived in Worcester past 21 years. I'm dedicated masshole.
Well, I'm a masshole living in New Hampshire now, so I'm sure. I know it's brutal.
Tax free though.
Yeah, it's all right, man. It's it's funny about New Hampshire is it seems a little throwback. People people drive by and they're still cranking like Guns N' Roses in the cars. It's funny. It's like, no, nothing at all. You don't hear that a lot, but it's totally cool. But in passing, and as a side, because this individual has made such an impact on the music world, and we're so close to it with Eddie Van Halen dying. I was a major Van Halen fan. I loved Van Halen. I think mostly knowing that Eddie passed, I didn't realize how much I took them for granted, or even his guitar playing for granted. And I just want to acknowledge on the show when significant people in the music world pass that have made such an impact. I just want to acknowledge the highly prolific playings of Eddie Van Halen. And I know there's a lot of Rush fans who share a love for Van Halen. There are some that don't, especially the Van Hagar stuff, which I like. But were you a Van Halen fan?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and I hear what you say when you say you take it for granted, because you don't. It's just the music and the personalities sometimes are so great, you just don't think they'll ever go away. It's like when David Bowie passed away.
I know.
And it was like, wow, this world does not have David Bowie in it now, which is really strange. And it is kind of a take it for granted thing. But whether you're a Van Halen fan or not, there is no denying that Eddie Van Halen created a style of guitar playing that not just changed guitar playing, changed rock music.
I know.
People, after that, you had everybody playing in that style.
Right.
And so there's no denying the influence that he had. Van Halen was a great band, but if you just want to get down to Eddie,
I know.
It's just incredible how much. I remember hearing that first Van Halen album. My neighbor had it.
Yeah.
He was a couple years older than me, and he threw it on. He goes, "Tell me what you think about this stuff." And I was listening to it. I'm like, "Wow, what is that? That is crazy." And he's like, "This guy playing guitar." I'm like, "That's not a guitar." I was just totally blown away by what I was hearing on that album. And so yeah, even if, like you said, even if you're not a fan of Van Halen, you got to give it up for Eddie, because there's really, think about like all, guys like, if you think about Steve Vai, and Joe Satriani, you can't say there's no Eddie Van Halen influence.
It's true
in there. Every hair band, out there, the guitar player had that style going on. And I think it became so prevalent that people kind of, after a while, kind of went, "Oh yeah, sounds like Eddie Van Halen," But I think there's a lot of people who forgot that he created that style of playing.
Eddie Van Halen was a disruptor. He changed things, and there are very few of those people in music history. And how lucky are we at our age to have experienced, at least towards the tail end, moving into the 90s. There was some movements of music in the 2000s, but not as impactful. But how lucky are we as middle-aged rockers that we got to experience this incredible renaissance of music? I mean, it's incredible. No one will ever understand it post, like my daughter. It's just going to be tales of myth and lore about these days of rock and roll, right? I mean, even when we were growing up, the stories of like Led Zeppelin, because I think I started to get into Zeppelin at like 12, 13 years old. I saw The Firm at age 15 at the Boston Garden. And even then, there was still a myth and lore about Led Zeppelin, but that's what drove Led Zeppelin during their impact and height of their fame. People didn't know a lot about them. Jimmy Page was a Satanist. He worshipped Aleister Crowley. All these kind of bits and pieces of information. Now we're just flooded. We know everything about everybody. What kind of coffee Bruce Springsteen likes? Who gives a shit? So it's funny to think about it that way with this flood of information. But geez, when we were growing up, we really got to experience some wonderful, at least the tail end of this massive wave of incredible music and the big acts. You talk about Neil Young. He's one of the last of these mansions on the hill, the big rock stars in the mansion on the hill. Music is such a cottage industry now. There's all these little bands putting out albums in their living rooms, and it's going out there in bits and pieces. And if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. Think of the concept album. That's who's putting out concept albums like Pink Floyd or any other major progressive band like Rush, right? Where is that? It's just doesn't seem to exist.
John, it's out there. I think in music there's a constant renaissance going on.
Yeah.
It's just that sometimes you gotta dig for it.
Dig deeper, yeah.
And there are tons of bands out there, and they may not be on the radio, and they may, not have a video, that's cranking on YouTube or, but they're out there and they're making that music. And, there's bands, there's bands that are still doing concept albums.
Sure.
There's bands like Coheed and Cambria, who are very much, who definitely have a Rush influence in there. And they've done some amazing, their first, I don't know how many albums were all about the same story. Yeah. It was a continuing story that was based, and a comic book that went with it and everything like that. You have bands like the Drive-By Truckers, who are kind of a alt country rock band, southern rock band, and they've done some great stories on their albums too. You just got to dig, and it's tough because, like you mentioned, there's so much information out there. Like when we were growing up, there was no internet, so it was just kind of like, hey, did you hear, Rush is coming to the Centrum, and you're like, oh my God, well, where'd you hear that? Well, I heard it on the radio, and that was like the only place you could hear it or see it in or a weekly like Boston Rock or
Phoenix
something
or
like
something,
that, right? Yeah, the Phoenix, something like that. And or you just like, oh, Van Halen, like what's wrong? What's up with the lead singer of Van Halen? Well, I hear he drinks baby's blood or whatever like that.
Yeah.
Now it's like you can find out immediately. You can take your phone.
Yeah.
The comedian Pete Holmes has a great bit on that about Tom Petty. It's like, where's Tom Petty from? I'm getting this California vibe. And so for 2 weeks, you're kind of asking people and you're talking to people at record stores, where Tom Petty's from. And then you see a girl in the street, she's got a Tom Petty shirt. And where's Tom Petty from? And she says, Florida.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God. And it was such a revelation. When you finally found out about something like your favorite musicians or artists or whatever, it was like, oh my God, now some of that makes sense of what they're saying. And it was now it's like you can just look it up right away, which is great. But it was a different. I hear what you're saying. It was kind of like a different feeling.
Yeah, before the GPS, there was some mystery to getting lost. That was exciting, right?
Oh my God, the time. It's funny. I live in Worcester now. How many times I got lost just trying to find parking around the Centrum?
Right, that's right. So many great shows there.
Yeah, no GPS back then. You had to look at a map or talk to somebody on the street and hope they didn't, rob you.
I'd like to freak somebody out and just pull out a map.
Right.
Pull up the side of the big map.
Yeah, there's a lost art.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, getting back on track, Eddie Van Halen. We love Eddie Van Halen, and our condolences to the Van Halen camp. Just huge loss. So, and I'm sure many Rush fans feel the same way. But anyway, just some show plugs, just stuff that needs to be duly noted before. We had on episodes 12 and 13, we had our guest and author of Clockwork Angels and Clockwork Lives, Kevin J. Anderson. It was a great experience. It was a great show. Please upload and tune into that one. A special show for sure. I want to thank all of our previous guests. We've been fortunate to get some really great guests on this show, so we're excited about that. As a reminder, you can hear our podcast on TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Simplecast, and others. This show is recorded on video, so please check it out on our YouTube channel. Click and subscribe. A quick Rush Radio shout out. You can find Rush Radio on the TuneIn app at rushradio.org. Do you know about rushradio.org?
No, I haven't checked that out yet.
Dude, live streaming Rush all day long. It's incredible.
Jeez.
I know.
Drive my daughter crazy. Fantastic.
Yeah, right. Well, I want to thank you to Ed Stenger of rushisaband.com, the premier Rush website. We love Rush as a band, as well as the Power Windows website. We could find them at 2112.net. All Rush, all day, up-to-date information, top-notch content. Another quick shout-out to the mighty Why Not. Their music can be heard in our show's intro, an incredible band and previous guests of ours. Rush fans, we want to hear from you. If you have comments, suggestions, ideas, or questions about the show, please submit those ideas, questions, and comments to twoguystalkingrush@gmail.com. That's 2TWO, not the number 2. Email us and let us know. We're always looking for super fans for our Rush super fan spotlight. What is a super fan? What makes you a super fan? Do you have a Rush tattoo on your forehead, your neck, whatever? You want to show it on your ass?
Rush hats.
Yeah, exactly. You got a Rush tattoo on your ass. I mean, we want to hear about it and why. So please email us about your story. Also, you can visit us at twoguystalkingrush.com. That's TWO, Guys Talking Rush, not Stalking Rush, which it looks like in the URL. We're certainly not stalking Rush. Facebook.
We could if we had time.
I know. I'm outside Getty's window right now, like in a tree. Facebook.com/2guystalkingrush. Find us on Facebook, all social media platforms. Twitter.com. That's /2 guys talk rush. You can find us on Twitter. And again, subscribe to our YouTube channel. So just a little bit of Rush history. Each week we like to just talk about the nerdy stuff, and it's really brief. And I think Rush fans really appreciate that. We try to deep dive as much as we can. In 1974, Rush recorded a live performance for Don Kirshner's rock concert during a taping in Los Angeles.
Such a great TV show, man.
I know, dude. What happened to that? Bring them back.
I found out about so much music through Don Kirshner's rock.
I know.
And it was always on. Well, it was always on after Saturday Night Live.
Yes.
Right? And
late night.
Yeah, it was one of those first. It was kind of like the midnight special, and I don't know if people remember Solid Gold, but they came out way before Solid Gold. But it was Don Kirshner was a huge music publisher, promoter.
Yes.
And he just knew the power of television.
He sure did.
Knew people wanted to see the bands. It was, if people can find that stuff online or whatever, definitely check it out.
Every now and then I dip in and watch the Aerosmith performance on there with Tyler in his striped jumpsuit, and it's just good stuff, man.
Great show.
I know. Remember Night Flight?
Oh my God, yes.
Oh, I love that. That's where I got introduced to RJD with Sabbath, like visually, because they played Neon Nights all the time. It's just like, nice. Oh my God, I know they played all the metal stuff.
Night Flight was another excellent show. That was they were competing with early MTV,
loved it, but it was special. Even V66 got into some deep stuff too, man. I liked V66 a lot.
Yeah.
1975, Rush played the Memorial Auditorium in Joplin, Missouri on the Caress of Steel tour. Magical. In 1977, Rush played the Expo Center in Abilene, Texas on the Farewell to Kings tour. In 82, Rush played the Kemper Arena in Kansas City, Missouri on the Signals tour. I love Signals so much.
That was my first tour.
You did? You saw Signals. Good for you.
I saw it twice. I saw Boston and Providence. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing. That was my first live Rush experience.
Lucky. Yeah. How old are you now? Do you mind me? Do you want to reveal that, or how old were you then?
I just turned 52.
Oh wow, good for you.
Yeah, I was in high school, and God, how old was I? I don't know. I can't do the math. Too many years. Too many years, too many beers.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you were 14, I think. Okay. That makes sense.
Maybe, around then.
In 2002, Rush played the Blue Cross Arena in Rochester, New York on the Vapor Trails tour, another great tour. 2005, Rush was referenced in the pilot episode of Squidbillies. Of course, everybody needs to know that bit of information. 2007, Rush played the first two nights at the Ahoy in Rotterdam, Holland on the Snakes and Arrows tour, later released as Snakes and Arrows Live. In 2012, Rush played the Air Canada Centre in Toronto, Ontario on the Clockwork Angels tour. Did you see any of those later tours, Mike?
I've seen, I think, pretty much every one from Signals.
Oh, wow. We'll get into that. We're going to get into that. Yeah. So that's good. That's good. And just a few other things. This is some new Rush content, just reminders of what's happening post Neil's passing and how Rush is maintaining relevance in popular culture. We really like to get into that stuff on Two Guys Talking Rush. The Rush Camp announced earlier today that Fantunes will be releasing a new officially licensed Rush book titled Neil Peart, The Illustrated Quotes, 108-page hardcover book that is slated for release on January 12th, 2021, just over a year after Neil Peart's untimely passing. How sad is that Neil Peart is no longer with us, man?
Yeah, that was a tough day.
That was so tough, dude. Yeah.
I remember I just got on the air for my shift at AAF.
Right.
And I remember Carrie came in.
Yep.
Said, "Come here, I want to give you a hug. I want to hug you before I tell you this." And I was like, great, I'm finally getting that raise.
Yeah.
And she held me and she went, Neil Peart just died. I said, what are you talking about? Because nobody knew he was sick.
Right.
He was a very private person,
right.
And I had no clue.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, Rolling Stone just announced that Neil Peart just passed away. And I just couldn't think.
Yeah.
It was just crazy. It's an awful thing that he's no longer with us.
It's incredibly awful.
Yeah. But, I gotta give credit to my boss at that time. His name is Joe Calgaro.
Yeah.
And he's a drummer. I don't know how much of a Rush fan he is, but I remember I was weeping on the air, and he came in and he just said, "The radio station's yours. Whatever you want to do." And he let me play 3 hours of Rush, and we found some great interview stuff and everything. And I'm kind of glad that I was there at that time.
Yeah.
And on the air, so that way.
As a Rush fan, you needed to.
Yeah, that way it was just we could play the music and play his voice.
Yeah.
Just let people know, who he was and the amazing music he was responsible for and stuff like that. But yeah. That was a tough one, man.
It's serious. It's true. Yeah. And Dan and I talk about this a lot on the show. The pandemic offered a little bit of free time to think about and reflect on things. And, you know, post Neil Peart's passing, the idea for the show, I thought of the idea for the show, not only as a celebration of Rush's music to keep the conversation going, but also just to keep the ideas and philosophies of Neil Peart alive. You know, and how not just the music of Rush, but, you know, what would you have without Peart's influence on the band? What would Rush be like without Peart? So in many ways, Peart has influenced so many people to do some incredible things in their lives that they may not even realize, like starting organizations and picking up an instrument, writing a book, you know, making new friends, meeting new people, you know, it's, and that's riding a motorcycle, dude. Yeah, dude, like all of that. That is, and by doing all this, it was inspired by the writings and philosophies of an incredible, I mean, he's, you know, he's the equivalent of like a Leonardo da Vinci to me, you know, just an inventive mind, an innovative spirit, you know, a real Renaissance man. He could do many things very well.
He really stayed who he maintained who he was.
That's right.
You know, he didn't play into the whole business. You know, and he didn't do all the promotional stuff and the meet and greets and things like that.
Definitely not.
He felt that, I think from, you know, what I've read about him over the years, he felt that he didn't think that was necessary. Like he was doing what he wanted to do, and he was lucky enough to do it. And, and all the accolades and things like that made him uncomfortable. Yeah. You know, he was like that the whole time, you know, the kind of the rock star. Yeah.
When I got the tech, because all of my friends know I've been ragged on all my life by a lot of my AC/DC loving friends for loving Rush so much. So I've become known in my camp to just, I love Rush, you know, so I've just become known for that over the years. So I got a flood of texts, and the one person I called was Donna Halper. I happen to be friends with Donna. Donna sat on my dissertation committee. She read my dissertation, which was not Rush related, but she is involved in higher education, and so am I. So we kind of formed a relationship, and I confirmed it with her. And you talk about weeping. I mean, I had my kid that day. My wife was at work, and my kid's like, "What's Dada? Why are you crying?" You know, I said, "Well, I lost a friend," but I didn't know Neil, you know, and that's the amazing thing about Neil. Like, I didn't know him, you know, I was so affected and impacted by his music for so long that the fact that I knew that he wasn't around anymore, it's almost like I just had an organ removed. You know, you miss like a limb or something, you know, like, whoa, you know, just, and that in itself is like, that's telling of his impact. That you didn't even know him. We're just fans, you know?
Well, that's what makes us fans, is that we could just relate to what he was writing about. You know, we felt that. I mean, that's kind of how I became such a huge Rush fan. Yeah. It was all perfect timing. I was a teenager growing up in Natick, Massachusetts, and it was the suburbs, and I was bored, and Signals
came at the right time.
Album just spoke to me.
Yeah, that came at the right time.
It addressed all those issues at a time in my life where I was trying to, you know, where I was wondering, what the heck am I doing here? Am I going to have to be here for the rest of my life? And why, you know, why I hate the people that I go to school with and all this stuff. And that's really a huge reason. And those writings really resonated with me. Yeah. His lyrics really touched me. And you know, and that's why we're fans, and that's why people say it's like they know me. Yeah. And sometimes, you know, that comes across as creepy, but it's so very true. That's what makes you love the music of a certain artist, because it feels like they're talking to you. Mm-hmm. It feels like they're saying, hey, we feel this way too. Yeah. And you're not alone. And that's one of the great things about Rush, because Rush, the music was like, you're right. You know, we take a lot of shit, or we used to, before somehow at some point Rush became cool. I don't know when that happened. Yeah, exactly. But it was like, you know, you had the kids who liked the classic rock stuff, and then you had the metal kids, you know, and they like Sabbath and AC/DC, and you know, whatever, Iron Maiden. And then Rush was for those other kids that didn't belong in any of those groups.
Right.
You know, and I think that's why Rush fans are so loyal and so enthusiastic. It's because they made a connection where they couldn't make other connections with maybe friends or family or other things in popular culture or anything. But there was that at least that one Rush song, like Analog Kid.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it was just like, yes, this guy gets what I'm going through right now. I don't know how. He's some Canadian dude from Toronto,
right?
You know, and has no idea who I am, and he's probably never been to Natick in his life, but somehow he's painted a picture of my life here. You know, so I think that's what really makes fans, is that connection, like you're part of this group.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's so incredibly powerful. It's incredible. Well, moving on, I want to get into more of your. Don't ever be sorry, dude. No, it's good. You're touching on a lot of important things here, and I want to get more into your, where you grew up and how you got into radio. But and wrapping up the little tidbits of information here is a music writer, Martin Popoff. I'm sure you know who Popoff is.
He's got a couple of great podcasts.
Oh yeah, he's a great dude, super knowledgeable. I mean, he's
a ton of books,
unbelievable. Yeah, he's been on the show, and his book Limelight, Rush in the '80s, the second book in his 3-part Rush Across the Decades series, has officially been released. The first book in the series was Anthem, Rush in the '70s, which released back in May, and the third book will be titled Driven, Rush in the '90s, and In the End, which should be released sometime next year. You can order your copy of Limelight, Rush in the 1980s or Rush in the 80s via Amazon and other retailers. Popoff has also been accepting orders for signed editions of his book on his website, martinpopoff.com. Great guy. We love Martin Popoff. A little tidbit, the Imitation Leather-bound book comes in 375 pages and includes 2 full-color photo inserts with 16 pages of the band on tour and in the studio. I have a few photos. I think I have a few. Oh, Rush in the 90s. I have a few photos in the Rush of the 90s book. I snuck my, funny story, I snuck my camera into several of those Snakes and Arrows tours. This was pre-iPhone. And back in the day, you'd get your ass hauled out of a concert if you put up a camera. And I just snapped, like I just kept going for it, like blatantly, just a real asshole. And I came home and I had so many amazing shots. And I had what I called a Rush photo exhibit. I made it bigger than what it really was. All these Rush fans came to Salem to see this photographer John Kane and his Rush.
Oh, wow. So you actually like publicly displayed them?
I totally did, dude. Yeah, dude. And the people flew out to see it. It's just, and the coffee shop owner was like, what's going on? They didn't realize. Yeah, they didn't realize the Rush fandom, you know. And then we had my buddy Chris is the lead singer and bass player, keyboardist as well in Lotus Land, the premier. Right. Rush, yeah, they're incredible, good guys, very talented. They played after, so the guy at the club said, he goes, it was he said this place hasn't been this full in like 10 years, you know. It was just filled with Rush fans. It was a fun night. Alex Lifeson's Boss CE1 Chorus Ensemble is one of the many guitar effects pedals featured in a massive new illustrated book titled Stompbox, 100 Pedals of the World's Greatest Guitarists, a 500-plus page coffee table book displaying the effects pedals of some of the world's greatest guitarists. The book is the creation of photographer Ilon Paz, who captures each of the pedals in his high-res detail with editing by Guitar World alums Dan Epstein and James Rotundi. Of course, Getty's book, big bad book of bass. Did you go to any of those signings or anything?
I did. I wasn't able to make those.
I know.
You know, kids, they get in the way of everything for crying out loud.
Seriously do. I know. Ultimate Classic Rock posted another excerpt from their recent interview with longtime Rush art director Hugh Syme this past week, where he discusses a farewell to King's album artwork and how he originally had more grandiose plans for the cover, but Rush's management forced him to scale things back. Earlier this month, UCR posted a portion of the interview where Syme discusses the Caress of Steel album artwork and why he wasn't completely satisfied with it. Rush's Power Windows celebrated the 35th anniversary of its release on October 14th, 1985, this past Wednesday. I had to mention this because Power Windows is how I got into Rush. I grew up in Somerville. I say this a lot on the show, but some seedy, older, Damone looking guy from Fast Times at Ridgemont High had a Chevelle and opened up the trunk, and he had a bunch of stolen records and a lot of, there was a rush, no pun intended, for the best stuff, Motorhead and all the stuff. And then of course what was left was Power Windows with the cellophane still on it. So I just said, fuck it, I'll grab this. And I put that on. I got immersed in the lyrics. And then it was boom, I was on my way. And then I saw the Hold Your Fire tour, and then boom, I was on my way. And I just have to owe it to Power Windows. Do you like 80s Rush? A lot of Rush fans don't.
Well, and I can understand why. Some of it's really kind of spotty. That Hold Your Fire album, not a big fan of. But every album has some great stuff. Like Force 10's a great tune.
Oh my god.
But
the Big Money, Grand Designs, Manhattan Project, Marathon Territories.
Oh yeah, Big Money. Getty's bass and Big Money is so outstanding, and the Manhattan Project is just a fantastic. That's again Neil Peart,
history
amazing
lesson.
Storyteller.
I know.
Yeah, it's a history lesson. I remember that show at the Centrum. It's one of the first times I took acid, and I swear to God, during the Manhattan Project, I thought the entire Centrum was taken off like a flying saucer.
Yes.
It was an unbelievable feeling. It was incredible. And,
I love it.
But I do. Yeah, there's some great stuff, and you look at 80s Rush. I mean, it started off so strong, with moving pictures and. Signals and I love Grace Under Pressure.
Me too.
I hear a lot of people rank on that album, but I love that album.
It's up there for me. Yeah, it's up there for me.
Yeah. You have Presto and stuff like that. And they did get, I think they did embrace technology a little too much. Yeah. And it kind of took away from the soul of the band. But, it's still on those albums, there's some really great stuff on there. So.
Yeah, totally. Well, Power Windows is the 11th studio album by Rush, released October 14th, 85 on Anthem. After touring in support of their previous album, Grace Under Pressure, in 1984, the band took a break and reconvened in early 85 to work on a follow-up. The material continued to display the band's exploration of synthesizer-oriented music, this time with the addition of sampling, electronic drums, a string section, and choir, with Power being a running lyrical theme. Power Windows was recorded in Montserrat in England with Peter Collins as co-producer and Andy Richards on additional keyboards. It reached number 2 in Canada, number 9 in the United Kingdom, and number 10 in the United States. Not too shabby for a band that came out in 1974. In January 86, the album reached platinum certification by the Recording Industry Association of America for 1 million copies sold in the United States. Rush released 5 singles from the album between 85 and 86. The Big Money, Territories, I love that tune, Manhattan Project, Mystic Rhythms, and Marathon. And the band supported the album with their 85-86 tour. Such an incredible
time. Marathon much better live than it is on an album.
I think a lot of these are much better live, dude. Yeah, show of hands, that album is incredible. Yeah. The live album. Yeah.
I just enjoyed seeing Marathon perform live as opposed to listening to it on the studio version.
With that laser projection, man. Remember they had the laser guy? Yeah, the runner.
Yeah, man.
I love that.
Rush shows way ahead of their time.
I often, when they did the Time Machine tour, no, wait, the tour where they went backwards in time, that was the R40 tour. Right? That's where they went.
That was the last tour.
The last tour. Yeah. I wish that they incorporated, they did a lot with the stage set going back in time. I wish they incorporated more of the stage, the aesthetic quality of the shows back then. Because there was a lot of, the early stuff was very, what people would consider antiquated, like the laser running man and all that. I wish they had brought some of back those early animations, maybe the balloons, the Presto hat.
I thought they had the rabbits coming out of the hat. They brought those out.
Did they?
I thought
maybe they did. I forget, man. I forget. I might have been really stoned.
So many should. I remember those with the Presto on the Presto tour, and then when they kicked into Tom Sawyer, they had roadies shaking the rabbits, making them dance.
They did, yeah. They were shaking them,
which I thought was pretty hilarious.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, but they had some. I think they were just masters. They knew they weren't exciting guys on stage.
Yeah.
And so they knew they had to have a really great production to go along with their music. And I think they did it really well. I think it wasn't overblown, and they had a great sense of humor, which always came out at their live shows.
Totally, man. And just, Rush just had the touch for merging art and music. And to me, that's what made them extra special, is they just had a feel for a good design, a feel for good visual, and knowing how significant that was to the live performance. It had transcended not just in the studio, but on their album artwork and all these things. Just having the quality art, the quality branding. The branding, the continuity of Rush branding exceeded comprehension, because there was so much thematically going on. Always there was always a story to be told with Rush's art, and that also showed up at the live performance, right down to the laser shows, to the light shows, and the in-betweens, the Rush in-betweens, the silence, when lights went down at a Rush show, when did you ever felt goosebumps, like that? Just what's coming next, right. What I miss live concerts at that level so much, dude.
I miss live music in general.
I know, dude.
It's been so long. Yeah. And that's one of the few things that I can physically still do.
Right.
I can't there's a lot of sports and things I like to do, but you know, just going to a show and seeing a band up on stage, just giving it their all, or a big sweaty crowd, or the unpredictability, like you said, what could happen next? Not just a Rush shows, at every show,
any show.
I miss that.
Me
but
too.
I love the in-betweens and the Rush shows. The films were always so great. That's where you really realize that Rush had just an amazing sense of humor.
I know.
They loved to, they took their music seriously. They never took themselves seriously.
That's right.
Which was great, and it was good to know, because it was kind of like, we're goofballs too, just like they are. They have the same goofy sense of humor.
It's so true. We're so lucky we got to see that, man. Well, moving on, and thanks folks for still listening. Hopefully you are. You haven't gotten into a car accident or anything like that, or fallen asleep. I know. It happens. We're old. Anyway, Mike, just to get into a little bit of your background, you've touched upon a few things, but first, as you were immersed in the field of radio, I've had Donna Halper on the show before, and of course today I was listening to rushradio.org on my walk, and I heard an excerpt of Working Man, very early live recording, and where Geddy says, "We want to thank Donna Halper at WMMS in Cleveland for." He said something, he's just giving accolades to Donna, and here it is, a female DJ, very progressive at the time, who introduces probably one of the most important bands to ever occur in music history, exposing the band to a larger audience by playing Working Man. Donna's talked about that a lot on various formats, from documentaries to radio and to podcasts. Can you bring folks behind the scenes of a contemporary radio station? How much can a radio DJ play of a specific band? Like you said, your director of your radio station allowed you to play as much Rush as possible for that day when you realized Neil Peart had passed. Is that a normal occurrence? Could you ever just say, I want to play all Rush all day today, and that's it? Are you?
Well, you could. You could, John, but you shouldn't expect to have your job at the end of the day.
Okay.
But that was a special. That was something that's very rare, to answer your question.
Yeah.
It's just because that guy Joe Calgaro really appreciated the human side of radio and the personalities, and knew that if we were really passionate about something, whether it was Rush or Cheesecake, whatever it is, it would sound good because we were so passionate about it. But he knew that how important Rush was to our format as a rock station, to the fans, to me, and he trusted me to kind of do a good job in paying tribute to Neil. And So that's very, very rare. Back in the day when like Donna Halper was, I think she was she the program director or music director of MMS in Cleveland? She was one of those.
Yeah.
So she had a position of authority at that time, which makes it easier for her. But radio was so very different when she was playing Working Man.
More freedom.
The formats were a lot looser. There was a lot more experimentation because rock radio was still at that time still fairly new.
Yeah.
You know, progressive FM rock radio, it was still kind of underground.
Yeah.
A little bit. And so back then it was easier for DJs to pick their own music, to push bands that they really liked. You know, they were the taste makers. You know, and it all, as consultants came in and format captains and everything, and a lot of research went into it, it all became a little more cookie cutter, you know, and there was a certain format you had to follow, and this was the product you were selling, you know, and it was up to the personalities to kind of set that apart from the other radio station that was kind of selling the same thing.
Yeah.
So, for Donna just to say, hey, this sounds really good, I think the people in Cleveland are going to like this, and throw it on. The last time I remember that happening was Rocco on WAAF. When I first started working there, started playing this band called Godsmack that sent him a CD. And then next thing you know, the program director's like, hey, this stuff is pretty good. We'll throw it into regular rotation, and then, you know, and it's Godsmack. So you know what happens next. And it's a very,
those days are over, right? Those days are over where a band could bring you something and say, hey, please play my music, or a manager. Is that still happen?
I think it's much more rare now. Yeah, I think it's much more rare now that would happen. I can't say that it's never going to happen or those days are over. Because sometimes you hear something and you realize, wow, this stuff you believe this song is great, and you feel like this is a winner. And I think I don't care what my vice president of programming says or my consultant says or whatever, I'm going to throw this on and people are going to like it. And I've, you know, at AAF over the years, I've been fortunate enough to be part of those meetings, music meetings. And you'd go in there and you'd sit in there, and the music director and the program director, you know, sometimes the consultant would be there, and I friggin' hated those days because I hate consultants. But you would sit in there, you'd listen to these songs, and you would be like, well, what do you think? Well, I don't know. You know, I remember there was this one band, I was just kind of like, well, these guys are really, really good, but I don't think they're going to go anywhere. I don't think they're mainstream enough. And they kind of sound like Aerosmith. I don't know. And, you know, that was Appetite for Destruction. So the golden ear of Mike Hsu isn't as reliable, you know, as say someone else, you know, who's saying this album's going to be huge. And, you know, so it's good to have a bunch of different people in there, but, you know, it was tough trying to figure out. And then there was a lot that went into it when I was doing it. And this is like the past 20 years. So, you know, before that, when you got into the 80s, when things really started to tighten up with research and formats and things like that, I'm not quite sure how they went about it. In the 70s, it seemed like it was way more free for all, but there's a lot of research that goes into it. There's call out research. There's mail research. There's auditorium research where, you know, you do a survey, and if all the people that answer the survey by saying your radio station is their favorite, then you get them all in the same room, some function room at a hotel.
Right.
And you ask them questions about the radio station and what kind of music that they want to hear and what they're tired of, and who, you know, so there's tons and tons of that going on. Right. Yeah. It's like, it's so, you know, there's a lot of factors and a lot of hard work that goes into what people are playing on the radio, how the decisions are made. It seems like Donna Halper's decision to play Working Man was very simple. It was just, she thought it was good and wanted to share it with people that listen to that radio station, which is one of the great things about radio. It doesn't happen
and
a
that
lot
song
like
is,
that.
And that song is long. I think she referred to it as a bathroom song.
Oh yeah, it's what? It's like 7.5 minutes or something like that. Yeah, that's enough time to pinch one out. Absolutely. But I think it's just that the whole concept of, I think this is good and I want to share it with people and hopefully they'll think it's good too. That to me, that's one of the greatest things about radio. Because when I was growing up listening to AAF and BCN and all those radio stations we talked about earlier, every now and then the DJ would throw something on there, especially like a local band.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, wow, that was really, really good. And then I'd go out and I'd buy their album, and then I'd be a fan of theirs for like this local band that used to be around or they're still around, the Neighborhoods.
Yep.
I remember listening to WBCN one afternoon and I came in the middle of the song and it was fantastic. It was Fire Is Coming by the Neighborhoods. And whoever the DJ was going on and back sold it. And I immediately went to Strawberries and I bought the record because I just, and that's like a great feeling. Like if you share something, if you're on the radio and you're playing the music and you share something that you think is good and other people think it's good too, that's a great feeling.
It's a magical thing.
It's rare.
Yeah, these days it's rare. Yeah, I suppose the days of the radio making or breaking a new band are over with the amount of digital accessibility and different formats that bands can expose themselves to. So I think the face of, and more than I, but the face of radio has changed in that way. It's a different delivery and has different purposes now. And
competing with other radio stations, you're competing with streaming services and YouTube. People can get music whenever they want.
I know.
Without commercials or some dumb DJ talking and interrupting the music,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You got to compete with that.
Right.
But I think the last research I saw, people are still discovering, the majority of people still discover new music on the radio.
Yeah, totally.
It's getting out there.
Oh, totally, man. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I love radio. I'm an advocate for it. There was a recent article, I was just doing a little digging on you. Sorry, nothing shady or anything like that, but there was an article called "Closer to iHeart." Veteran AAF DJ Mike Hsu brings the spirit of radio to the Pike. This is the new station you're at, and I just love that title, and I love that they incorporated your love for Rush into that title. And this is just a little excerpt. In January, Mike Hsu, a diehard Rush fan, had one of the most emotionally hardest days on the air on one of his shifts when the news broke that Rush drummer and lyricist Neil Peart died. While Peart's death was tough to handle, it was nothing compared to the heartbreaking news you got on February 18th that AAF would no longer be on the air. How did they figure out you were a Rush fan, and how did that kind of personify the article?
Craig Saman wrote that from the Telegram and Gazette, and
okay.
I've living in Worcester for over 20 years.
Yeah.
I've run into him because I went to tons of shows and he's out there covering. I don't think the guy sleeps. He covers like all the shows, big and small. Not just shows, but like musicals and theater productions and all this stuff. He's regular news. He's always out there covering it. So I've run into him a lot.
Yeah.
And he knew I was a Rush fan, and he listened, and so I think that's and I was very grateful that he stuck all that in there.
I love it.
And it was nice that my first night on the air on the Pike, my first Chuck Perks, who's the program director over there, another former WAF guy. He said, I gave you you can play Working Man if you want to start off,
cool.
Start off your run here at the Pike with some Rush. I said, dude, that's awesome. Thanks a lot. Cause I actually have to pee right now. So that's a perfect thing to say. But no, it was great. So that's pretty cool. Craig, it was really nice of Craig to do that, to put all those Rush references in there. I thought that was great.
I love it, man. It's like sets you off in a kind of in a fresh, how do I say, like it it puts you in a place as a DJ because it gives you credibility, your taste in music and, paying homage to, the world's greatest band. Right. So Mike, take us back. How did you get in? Did you love radio as a kid? Did you take apart radio? I mean, what'd you do? What kind of kid were you? Were you a nerdy kid or what? I mean, you grew up in Natick.
Well, my earlier years, we lived in West Newton. Yeah. I think I was a regular kid. I'd set my GI Joes on fire and, just do regular kid that play wiffle ball and stuff like that. I think when I really started getting into music though, I was living in Natick. It was around 6th grade. And that was the Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath.
Trifecta.
Yeah, it was, my mother was friends with a woman who had, again, sons who were a little older than me. And they were like, hey, have you listened to Led Zeppelin? And I was like, no. And they were just like, oh my God, you're a freak. Sit down. And they played The Song Remains the Same. And they dissected Moby Dick because one of them was a drummer and, and they just got into it so much. And their passion was so infective that I got into that. And they did the same thing with Black Sabbath and Pink Floyd. So, but as far as radio goes, unlike you actually love physical radios, and I do too. But what did it for me was we used to take a lot of long trips in the old Datsun when I was a little kid, and it just came with an AM radio. It's a stock AM radio, and so it was basically you listened to a radio station as long as you could until you were out of the signal area, and then you tried to find another one. And I think it was that whole experience. And during the summer, we drive everywhere. We have family in Pennsylvania. We drive to Florida, all over the place. And it was listening to the people on the radio having such a good time, or at least sounding like they were having such a good time, mixed with the music and how they presented the music and created the mood. And I think that's kind of what got me interested in that to begin with. And then later on, really recognizing some great personalities. Like I mentioned Mark Portnoy earlier, he's no longer with us, but there was a guy who I would, once the music came on, I'd change the station because I just wanted to hear him talk. Yeah. Because he was hilarious and he was really smart. He was clever. And, so later it got to be like, that sounds like a really great job. I totally want to do this. And this was early on. This was like, I was in junior high and, listening to BCN and AAF. And then I went to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting when they had a high school program, which was every Saturday. You had a 4-hour class every Saturday for a couple of months. And so I took part in that. And so that kind of taught me about the mechanics of radio, how it worked, what commercials, why they played commercials, how they played commercials, how formats were run, time clocks, all the little things you learn about the physical things about the job. But
it's also like a juggling act, right? I mean, there's a lot of things you have to do while you're not only
you're multitasking for sure.
Yeah.
You always got to keep an eye on the time. Like there's a lot of jobs where he's like, I don't want to look at the clock. It'll go by faster. Yeah. Whereas in radio, you are constantly looking at that clock. Every minute you're looking at that clock and trying to figure out, do I have time to do this? Can I fit this in? Do I have to drop something? Do I have to cut this? And that experience at, what I mentioned earlier, interning at WBCN with Charles Laquadera, that was a shock to the system because that was just my introduction to the business of radio, not just the super creative power that was in that show. I mean, especially working with Billy West. Yeah. I mean, come on, he's Ren and Stimpy. He's the Honey Nut Cheerio bee. I mean, this guy, he's Fry and Futurama, right? I mean, the guy's an amazing, one of the most talented guys I've ever worked with. The two most talented guys I've ever worked with, had the pleasure of working with him and Kevin Barbary on AAF. Just amazing talents.
Yeah.
But then I also learned that if you missed a commercial, then you had to answer to the client, and that's money that they spent. So there was that whole business side that I really you know, that I had to take seriously. You know,
Yeah.
at first I was like, I'm just going to be a DJ, man. I'm going to play what I want. And
Rock and roll. Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, I do want to get paid, so
Right.
I should play these commercials on time, you know. And,
Right.
but yeah, it was basically, I think, those trips that were just like, this sounds like a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do it very early on, and I've been really, really lucky.
Yeah.
You know,
Do you think that Rush inspired you in some way to become a rock radio? It's a far-fetched question. You could say no.
Not at all.
Yeah.
No, because that's where I first heard Rush, was on the radio. And then after I just fell in love with the band, it's like, yeah, I'm going to play a ton of Rush when I get on the air, man. You know, and there were times where I could, you know, and I think, yeah, it's just that I wanted to, like I mentioned earlier, I wanted to share that love of that music with people. It's like, this is something so great, you should give it a listen, you know, and that was an experience that I wanted to have also.
Was there like at AAF, was there a rotation of the same songs that you'd play by Rush, or could you just say, all right, this month we're going to play this crop of tunes? Like, I know Limelight gets a lot of rotation. Obviously, Tom Sawyer, you know, Free Will, The Spirit of Radio. Was there an opportunity to get into some deep cuts here and there, or no?
Very, very rarely.
Yeah.
As I mentioned earlier,
these were locked in, right? These songs were locked in based on what people wanted to hear.
These were songs that were heavily researched, spent a lot of time, you know, with people answering questions about what they wanted to hear, kind of a little bit based on how well the songs were doing in other markets. Although Boston is a very unique market, because it had more usually a radio market, a big market has maybe one or two rock stations, but at one point Boston had like 5, you know, plus all the colleges here and the college radio stations. You got to throw that into the mix. And so, and it's New England, so you got all these states packed in together and stuff like that. And
so what songs can you recall were there 10 songs or 20 songs? I've never, I'm just thinking of this now.
Yeah, as far as Rush goes, nah, maybe 10, you know, like the ones you mentioned. You know, you throw in Closer to the Heart, maybe The Trees on occasion, Working Man here and there.
Nothing from the 90s though, right? We wouldn't hear any. It was all the classic stuff, right? Would you hear any?
Yeah, it was all the 70s and 80s stuff.
Yeah.
Not really too much from the 90s at all.
Maybe Subdivisions.
Yeah, you know, not enough from Signals, in my opinion, or Grace Under Pressure.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the 90s, you know, nothing from like the big 90s albums. Like, I'm trying.
Counterparts.
Nothing like that.
Yeah.
You know, they would probably. I think about AAF is when a new Rush song came out, we'd play it.
Yeah.
But if it didn't do well on the charts and it didn't do well in the research, then it wouldn't last very long.
Go away.
But
yeah, interesting.
At least we'd jump on it. And that's why when Rush came to the area, they were always very good to us about promotions and things like that.
Yeah.
Because they knew that we were a station that, well, you know, at least AAF will at least play the new song. They won't just like push it aside and say these guys are done or nobody likes this band or whatever, you know.
Mike, how lucky are Rush fans to have had you as a DJ, as a Rush fan? We were very lucky to have you, man.
You gotta wave the flag.
Thank you. Exactly, dude. Like
you said earlier, you know, you took a lot of crap from your friends. I took a lot of crap from my coworkers, especially Greg Hill, who never understood Rush. He's a Bruce Springsteen man, you know.
I never understood Bruce Springsteen, so there it goes.
I love Bruce Springsteen, but
I know.
You know, don't give me crap about a Rush having a 9-minute song when you got like friggin' Thunder Road out there that's almost 10 minutes long or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, Bruce is pretty long-winded himself.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, lyrically he's great too, just like Neil. But and I took a lot of crap up there. It was like people would either call and go, "Dude, you're a Rush fan. That's the best thing," or they'd call up and say, you know, Rush is the worst band ever, and I can't believe they were wearing dresses on 2112. And I have to say, those aren't dresses; they're friggin' kimonos. Get it straight.
That's so
you know,
funny.
and just Yeah, so there was a lot of that back and forth. I don't know what point, John, did Rush become this kind of like cool thing?
Well, we covered that in this show. We had Darrell Bowman, who wrote a dissertation on Rush, and we talked about where the tipping point was of the emergence of Rush as no longer the biggest cult band that existed to the Rush fan, and then when did Rush kind of cross over, become mainstream? We talk about that, and you could say maybe it started to begin with there were spotty moments, in reference to Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and one of the frames, Exit Stage Left is makes a cameo on the deal, and of course Strange Brew with Geddy performing there. It's spotty. I think Rush showed up in various areas leading up to the 2000s. Of course, the Colbert Show that was, and then
they were on the Colbert Show.
Family Guy.
Why were they on the Colbert Show? That's what I'm kind of asking.
Yeah.
At what point did the mainstream media, start paying attention to Rush? And Colbert, he was like, well, my producer's a huge Rush fan. Yeah. They kind of made a bit out of that.
Sure.
It's
I think it had a lot to do with social media. I think social media. Yeah. Oh, totally.
The fans were able to finally connect. All over the world. Fans
were finally, that massive network of fans that was so disconnected, now had a means to connect. And even when you saw Rush on the Signals tour back then, they were still a massive band. I mean,
yeah, they weren't getting a ton of radio play.
They weren't.
Did.
But if Signals came out during the age of this digital age, and Rush were the band that came out now, they would explode. So I think it's just people, you could not ignore the prolificity of and magnitude of the legacy of albums, the impact the band had an influence on other bands, and also just the massive sellout tours. I mean, they're the one band that's just selling out tour after tour after tour. Yeah. I mean, there was a time where Rush had an opening band. I think when thinking of the Presto tour, Mr. Big was the opening band, and then Candlebox on
Fastway.
Fastway, all that. Totally.
I forget what tour that was. Michael, the Macaulay Schenker group at one point.
That's right. So
I did get to see on the Signals tour, though, Rory Gallagher. I don't know if you know who he is.
Oh, yeah, dude. Good for you.
He opened, I caught him at the Providence Signals tour, and I had no clue who he was. But I was amazed at what an incredible guitar player and singer he was.
Amazing.
And he's kind of a cult artist himself. But yeah, they had, at some point they said, screw it, we won't need an opening band. We'll just play two sets, and which is great.
Yeah.
But
there was there was a shift when, I think it was post Counterparts, where the ticket came out that said An Evening with Rush. That meant, and I always thought that when I saw Rush with an opening band, why are they wasting their time with an opening act? No offense to the opening act. I know there's business decisions to be made with that for supporting acts, but Rush didn't need it by the 90s. They didn't need to have an opening act. So I was really excited when Rush finally came around, and I still have my ticket stub. I forget what year it was, but Rush, it said An Evening with Rush. It was just 3 hours, and it was the best 3 hours of your damn life if you were a Rush fan. And then they continued on with that pattern. And then there were the milestone shows, the R30s, the R40s, and the big concert tours. So I think it was inevitable. And if you even think about this, just when the iPhone comes out and the sharing of information, live performances, it was just inevitable that Rush would make it into popular culture and the mainstream the way they did. I don't think they lost integrity, though. I think their music yeah,
absolutely. No, there was nothing
that happens
that they did.
Yeah, right. That happens, though.
There was nothing they did. They just kept doing what they did, right, which was being themselves. At some point, the rest of the world caught on. And you know what I think it was, John? I think it was like the people like us that took so much crap, you know, over the years got into positions of influence, whether on the radio or they became bosses somewhere, or they became heads of movie studios.
Yeah.
And they were like, you know what? The script about these two guys who love Rush, this movie, we're going to go ahead with this because this is probably I'm thinking the producer was like, this is my chance to actually meet Rush. So I want to make this movie. Yeah. You know, so I think people, you know, and then you go to the later Rush shows, you see the guys, like the older guys like us, and we've got our Hold Your Fire tour shirt on or whatever it is. But then you see their kids with them.
Yep.
You know, and they've obviously bombarded their kids with the music, you know, from infancy or whatever. And that sometimes that works. In my daughter's case, she's somehow impervious to the power of Rush. But I think that was it too, that a younger generation learned to appreciate it.
Yeah.
And that is the social media generation. And like you said, a younger generation was able to spread it around.
They seeped into popular culture, bits and pieces, and, you know, from Freaks and Geeks to I Love You Man to Family Guy. And you're right, those people that were producing those shows, those people in leadership positions who grew up listening to Rush now could incorporate it into their art forms, and then it starts to show up in popular culture. Most definitely, man. Yeah, because I think Rush had a continuum of this. It was inevitable that Rush became not the secret band that us kids in the back of the class loved to keep to ourselves. I liked it better when Rush was my own.
Right.
I like that.
There's a lot of bands like that. You're like, oh, I wish, you know, now everybody likes them. It's kind of like,
yeah.
But to me, they somehow maintained that kind of air about them. Like they were the big secret. Like even to the end, it was just kind of like you were in the club.
I know.
You were in a club if you were a Rush fan.
Right.
You know, and you saw another guy with a Rush shirt on, you kind of like pointed at him and you were just like, yeah, man. You know, there they are. You know, did you see the last tour or whatever?
Yeah.
You know, sorry, that's my dog's.
It's okay. It's all right, brother.
But yeah, so I just, it's somehow along the way, it became cool. And if I could just do a side note, since we were talking about opening band.
Yeah.
I am so very glad that I got to see Primus open for Rush.
Oh yeah, I remember. What tour was that again? Roll the Bones. Yes.
Roll the Bones. That was the first time I saw Primus live, and they were so amazing. And one of the greatest there was a couple of great moments. They were playing March of the Bastards.
Yes.
And this dude like came out in between the barrier and the front of the stage. He had like a hunch. He looked like Quasimodo. He had like a hunchback, and he was playing this empty cardboard box. He was like a drum, and he's kind of going along with it. Here they come. You know, he's dancing, and they ended the tune, and he threw the box in the air, and I got to see it. It was Alex Lifeson.
That's awesome.
Dancing in front of them. And then during Rush's set,
was that the Worcester Centrum? Was that the Centrum?
No, this was when I lived in Richmond, Virginia.
Oh, so okay, all right.
Coliseum.
Okay.
And like they're playing, and all of a sudden, Les Claypool pops up from behind the drum riser, dressed as like a Native American. Like he had the mohawk and everything with the face paint, and he had a Nerf bow and arrow thing, and he kept shooting Geddy Lee in the ass with these Nerf arrows, and Geddy would turn around and he wouldn't see anybody because he would like disappear, and he did it like 2 or 3 times.
I love it.
During the show.
I love it.
And it was just like, and that's like the sense of humor. The music is so serious, but yet they didn't take themselves seriously.
Yeah, of course, Les Claypool is a massive Rush fan, so we know that.
Oh, yeah.
So on this show, we like to ask guests what their top 5 albums are. So I'm going to ask you, if you could, out of the 19 studio albums or however many there are.
I knew this question was going to come up, and I still haven't figured it out.
Try.
I got to say, I always go back. It does change week to week.
I know.
Like today I was listening to Snakes, or no, yesterday I was listening to Snakes and Arrows.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that album a lot. You know, Working Them Angels is, I don't know, that's just such and the Larger Bowl.
Spindrift.
Those are such great songs.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, but
I consider that album a warm up to Clockwork Angels. I mean, I like Snakes and Arrows, but I think the Clockwork Angels is a far better album. I like the instrumentals, Malignant Narcissism and all. Yeah, is it Main Monkey Business that's on that? Yeah, Main Monkey Business. Yeah.
I always find myself going back to Fly By Night.
I love Fly By Night, dude.
Or Hemispheres.
Yes.
Or Brace Under Pressure.
Oh, love it.
I thought that, I already mentioned Signals and how much that means to me, but
of course,
those are the ones I find myself going back to.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get a hankering for Permanent Waves.
Yeah.
And just even the songs that get played so much, on the radio, like you mentioned earlier, like Free Will, Spirit of Radio.
It's tend to get overplayed for me, but yeah.
But you know what? I can still sit and listen to them.
Yeah.
And I think it's mainly because you can hear the joy in their playing.
Yeah.
Like they sound like they're having fun playing.
Right.
Even though it's in a studio atmosphere and we all know how meticulous they are in the studio, but it still comes across as like three guys who just love what they're doing.
Yeah.
And
what's your favorite period of Rush? If you were to pick a period of Rush, is it the 70s, 80s, 90s? Is there just a special period of Rush that you love the most?
I have to say that late 70s, early 80s, going into the early 80s.
Yeah.
And I think it might be just nostalgia because that's when I first really fell in love with them.
Sure.
But yeah, that seemed, I always ask people when they say, oh yeah, I like Rush. And so I always ask them this question: do you like Rush with Neil Peart with a mustache, or do you like them with Neil Peart without the mustache? That's like, so I kind of like that, when he shaved it off era.
Yeah. Yeah.
The middle there.
There's so much to feast on with Rush. That's why it just never gets old, and there's so much content to pull from. That's what's so magical about them. Favorite Rush song? If you were to pick one song, that was it.
John, no one can't answer. That's just an infuriating question. That's
I know it is.
Picking a favorite child.
I could pick one. Subdivisions for me. I've said it. Subdivisions is my It was a tie between Limelight and Subdivisions. I played Limelight at my wedding. Today's my wife and our 10-year anniversary. And when we
congrats!
No, thanks, man.
You beat the average, man. That's awesome. The average is 5 years in the United States. So,
I just have nothing. I just have nothing else to do, and I'm not very attractive. So, that when we entered into the room full of people, like, yay! I had in rotation.
Oh, that's great,
and I know. But
you're so lucky.
Yeah, that was my wife. She understood. But Subdivisions for me. So you got to pick one, man.
Wow. Jesus Christ. One that always. I got to say, from that same album, I love Digital Man. And I think I appreciate it even more now because it was Neil Peart basically telling us what the future was going to be like in 1980. Was it 82?
Yeah.
Was that 82 when that album came out?
That's Digital Man is on Signals.
On Signals.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at his world is under anesthetic, subdivided and synthetic. His reliance on the giants and of the science of the age, so that's basically describing now. We're all taking meds, to control our moods,
right.
And we're reliant on the giants of our age. We're on Zoom right now.
That's right.
We're always using Google, Elon Musk. You're thinking. I'm thinking of all the stuff he called in that song. He plays fast forward just as long as he can, but he won't need a bed because he's a digital man. It's because you just won't sleep. Like you mentioned earlier, the information just keeps coming, keeps coming, and it's nonstop. There's no time to sleep. You got to keep up with it all. And it's just amazing. He was talking about that, and in the beginnings of that were in the late 70s, but he was describing what life is like now in 1982.
It's like Nostradamus.
Yeah, he's like he's a time traveler.
He is.
Yeah, he didn't die. He went somewhere else in time at this point to just get some new stuff for some new songs.
Imagine, I believe that. If anybody was to be able to, it would be Neil Peart. He's in another realm.
I love that tune. I love how it's Rush experimenting with reggae. I think it's one of Geddy's finest performances.
Yeah.
That's the one that comes to the top of mind now. Although I was listening to Cygnus X1 today, and the way that song kicks in is that that's fantastic. That's a tough question, man, for a fan.
I give you credit. I've never heard anybody say Digital Man is their favorite tune. Hey,
it'll change tomorrow.
We you know something on this show, Mike Hsu, we often have surprises. And we have a very special guest today on this show. You're special, Mike, but we have somebody. We have somebody that's special in another way. I would like to introduce Billy Sheehan to Two Guys Talking Rush, American bassist known for his work with Talas, Steve Vai, David Lee Roth, Mr. Big, Niacin, and the Winery Dogs. His latest, Sons of Apollo, progressive metal supergroup formed in 2017 and composed of drummer Mike Portnoy, bassist Billy Sheehan. Our next guest, keyboardist Derek Sherinian, vocalist Jeff Scott Soto, legend and guitarist Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Sheehan has won the best rock bass player readers poll from Guitar Player magazine five times for his lead bass playing style. What an influencer. Sheehan's repertoire includes the use of chording, two-handed tapping, right hand, three-finger picking technique, and controlled feedback. Here he comes, the magical, the mystical, the amazing Billy Sheehan.
How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Billy, I just want to say thank you for your patience. No,
thank you for your patience. My schedule is so chaotic. Plus, you ever wake up and you know it's Friday. You wake up, it feels like Friday. Or you wake up, it feels like Sunday today. It's definitely Monday. Now with this, I don't know what day it is, where I am, what time it is. And so I apologize if this took a long time to set up because I just have no idea. Today is Friday?
I think so.
Today is Friday. Yes, today is. I think so. Wait. Oh, yeah. You got me asking that question. Yeah, today's Friday.
Yeah, no, I'm questioning everything.
I think it's. I
apologize.
Don't apologize, man. I'm so grateful for you being here, and I think it's COVID. I think COVID has thrown our schedules off big time.
I know it's gotten into the middle of my brain and hit my time clock, and I have no idea.
Another symptom of COVID. So
Go ahead.
Sure. No. How are you doing? How have you been?
Doing great. I've been very busy around the house. I'm a home handyman, so I've got all kinds of stuff going on. I'm making a nature trail in our woods. I got 2 chainsaws. I'm out there tearing trees down, ecologically sensitive, of course, but just getting us a way we can get down into the woods and see these. Behind my house, there's a lot of just deep woods, trees this big around, and so I'm making a way to do that. I carpeted and tiled the stairs going into the garage. I've done a lot of home handyman stuff, so because when we talk a lot about bass and doing my own modifications, it came from that because I've learned a little bit about how to work with wood and doing various things around the house. So I've been exploiting my capabilities by fixing up the house and being here home. This is the longest I've been home, I think, since the 70s.
I was going to say, yeah.
I can imagine. With all the music all the bands and all the projects you're involved in, your whole life. Yeah,
incredible.
It must be weird just to have everything being one place for that long and not being in some kind of cinder block room waiting to go on somewhere or on a bus or a plane or a car.
Exactly. Well, I am glad that I have not had to get on an airplane since March, so that's very nice.
Wow.
Because flying is an ugly experience in general.
Yeah.
But I do miss playing, and I love playing. I live to play live.
Oh, we know.
That's my thing. So I'm coping as best I can, but I'm practicing my ass off every day. I'm hitting it hard.
Love it.
I opened up both garage doors, and I bought a 20-pound bag of peanuts, and I throw a handful out there, and the chipmunks come. And now they're coming right up to my feet. And I got them taking it out of my hand. Now, these are wild. These aren't like city park chipmunks. These are the wild beasts. They one look at you, and they'll take off and go 100 yards into the forest to run away. But these guys are starting to trust me now, so I'm making
Where do you live? Where do you live, Billy? Do you mind revealing? What part of the country do you live in?
I'm just outside of Nashville. I was in L.A. since 1985 for 32 years, and then 3 years ago, this month, we moved here to Nashville. And
nice.
Sadly, LA is kind of falling apart. I love LA. I love my friends there. But it's a sad situation in California in general.
That's what we hear.
So, yes, we made our move and we got out, and we're very much in love here with Nashville. It's a wonderful city.
Well,
how is the it's Music City, and there's so many great musicians in Nashville and songwriters, and has that kind of changed the way you approach music or write music in any way?
Not really. I'm an old dog. You can't teach me a new trick. but I have been exposed to a lot of things that I was never around, like sitting around a group of people and writing a song. I had an incredible writing session with Desmond Childs, who's famous writer. He wrote "Livin' La Vida Loca," and pretty amazing to watch a grandmaster like that at work and be like in the circle with him. It was pretty amazing and educational, very much so. So and right now I'm in the middle of producing a record by a gentleman by the name of John Statham. And he's just a great songwriter, but it's a little countrified, which is not my thing.
I was going to say, have you ever performed on a country album before out of all the projects you've had?
I have. I have actually, but only in secret and sneakily, and I'm not going to say who it was.
Okay, we won't reveal that. Yeah.
I'm already in enough trouble.
Billy,
Two guys are talking, brush 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 two guys.
Stay tuned for more with Billy Sheehan on the Two Guys Talking Rush podcast next week. That's not nice.
Live music inspires millions around the world, but the concerts we all enjoy wouldn't be possible without the countless crew members working behind the scenes. As COVID-19 puts concerts on pause, we want to extend a helping hand to the touring and venue crews who depend on shows to make a living. Crew Nation was created to do just that. Crew members are the backbone of the live music industry, and we hope you'll join us in supporting them through this temporary intermission until we can once again unite millions around the world through the power of live music. Crew Nation is powered by Music Forward Foundation, a charitable 501c3 organization that will be administering the fund. Live Nation has committed $10 million to Crew Nation, contributing an initial $5 million to the fund, then matching the next $5 million given by artists, fans, and employees dollar for dollar. Please support Crew Nation at www.livenationentertainment.com/Crew Nation.